All right. Let us begin. Okay, so I need some accountability because I told myself all day I have to write on this whiteboard a lot. So if I go a while and I'm not, somebody throw a Sharpie at me and say, "Hey, bud, get up there and write down some stuff on that board," because I need to use the whiteboard. So if this is your first time here, I just apologize. You should have been here sooner, and now you're here, and I'm glad you're here. But this is an interesting one to just show up to out of the gate because we've laid a ton of framework. In the framework that we've done so far on understanding what the gospel is, we took 2 sessions on that, and then how the gospel works, and then what our motivations are in sharing the gospel. And now we're just going to spend from here out talking about methods, like methodology. And the problem with jumping into methods is if you don't understand what the gospel is, how it works, and what your motivation should be, then trying to jump into methods is going to be problematic for a bunch of reasons. So I would tell you, if you are just showing up, the good news is you get to sit in here for an hour while I talk to you, and then you also need to go catch up on like 4 hours of teaching to catch yourself up on where you are right now, because what I've said up to this point is really, really important, and we're kind of at a hinge now where we're going to jump into methodology, and methodology can be dangerous if it's divorced from like the theology that would go underneath of it, if that makes sense. And so a quick review. We've talked. Our 2 approaches to the gospel have been a systematic approach to the gospel, which is that God is holy, that man has sinned, that Jesus Christ died in our place, and that we are called to repent to repent and believe that message. Okay, so that was the first night. It was a systematic approach to the gospel, and what I basically said is you need to understand God's holy, man is sinful, Jesus died in your place, and that we're called to respond. And I gave you biblical texts and not a bunch of them, just I think I like 1 per, and then you can kind of fill out the rest of that. So somebody asked me like, "Hey, what are some verses that I can kind of memorize around that framework, that systematic?" So God is holy, that was Isaiah chapter 6, that's like verses 1 to 10. So study those, memorize those. I didn't set out in life trying to memorize Isaiah chapter 6, I just did because I read it so much. That's probably a pretty decent approach. Just read it a lot, study it a lot, understand it. So that was that. So God is holy, man is sinful. Romans 3 is about as good as it gets there, verses around like verse 20, where Paul just says, "Hey, you're not good, no one's good. In fact, it's not even that you're not good, you're like everything we do is worthless." So that kind of really establishes how broken we are in sin. So Romans 3 is a good one. There are certainly others. Jesus Christ died in our place. Are you trying to sign language for me to write right now? I don't want to write this. If I wanted to, and if I wanted your opinion, I'd ask for it. Okay, sound booth guys? So anyway, you're writing, I'm talking, all right? That's the value of being me in this position. So anyway, where were we again? So man is sinful, right? Okay, Jesus died in our place. 1 Corinthians 5:21, or is it 2nd? I don't remember, but 2 Corinthians 5:21, excellent. God made him to be sin who knew no sin so that we could become the righteousness of God. That's one. There's a bunch of others. But there's a reason, like, that I'm not giving you a long list is because as I said that night, I have given you the framework. Now you go build the house. Like I'm starting, I want to like kickstart you in this. But if you are going to be an effective proclaimer of the gospel, you are going to have to take ownership of this and go, all right, Alex gave me the frame, but now I got to go build the house. So that's where I want you to do that. And then the necessity of response. I mean, John 3:16 is a good one. God so loved the world, he gave his only son that whoever belief won't perish but have everlasting life. So that's the systematic. That's the framework, okay? And you need to understand that, you need to study that, you need to understand how those things work, and then you need to be ready to communicate that when the opportunity arises. After that, we talked about the gospel by way of story. And basically, we took the entire storyline of the Bible and talked about it from beginning to end. And the storyline goes like this. Chapter 1 of the story is creation. God makes the world, it's good. Chapter 2, we break it, the fall. You can read about that in Genesis chapter 3. Chapter 3 to the gospel story is redemption. God is going to fix what's gone wrong in the world, and he's going to do it through a person named Jesus. And so Jesus is going to come into the world and fix all of this. And you can read, that's what the Bible's about. So basically, anywhere you're reading in the Bible is going to tie into the story of Jesus fixing what's gone wrong. And then chapter 4 to the gospel story is the end, that we are going to one day be together forever in the presence of God for all of eternity, where we will experience maximum joy in the presence of him. As his glory is seen, so our joy will be tied to that. And as the psalmist said, and said it well, better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. So heaven's going to be awesome. So that's the system, that's the story. If you don't understand that, we're done here. I cannot stress enough how important that is. You cannot proclaim the gospel if you don't know what the gospel is, right? So those first 2 sessions, really, really important. After that, session 3, we talked about how the gospel works. And we came to the conclusion in here, with our Bibles open, that it is God ultimately who makes the gospel work. God ultimately makes the gospel work. God is the one who brings the growth. God is the one who sees to it that the mission's accomplished. God is the one who gathers the people to himself through the means of his people proclaiming the gospel. So did that. It was great. And nobody emailed me. I was surprised. So we were good there. God ultimately makes the gospel work. Then after that, we talked about motivations, and I'm not going to review that. You can go listen to it. But we talked about what our motivations need to be as we go about to proclaim the gospel. Now we're going to be talking through methods. And I'm going to give you 3 methods that are just really important tonight. And then we're going to get into kind of talking about a methodological approach to J-dubs, so that's Jehovah's Witnesses. We're going to talk about Catholicism. It might bother some of you, by the way, that I would even mention a Catholic next to a J-dub, and then after that, an atheist, because you might go, Jehovah's Witness, okay, don't believe Jesus is God, that's problematic. Atheist, don't believe there's a God, that's problematic. But where does Catholic fit in there? Well, a Catholic fits in there in that, and to be clear, I'm not saying that there are not Christians in the Catholic Church. I'm not saying that. Nor would I ever say, of course, that everybody, even in this room, or certainly here on a Sunday morning, is a Christian. But there would be a big difference. The difference would be, if you find somebody in here who is not a Christian, who just sat through a couple of our services, has been around here, and you say, how is it that you get to heaven? And they say, well, you need to try hard, work hard, be a good person, things like that. My conclusion to them is going to be, well, you are certainly not a Christian, but it is because you've not been listening. Whereas with a Catholic, I'm going to say to them in a Catholic church, how is it that you get to God? And they might say something like, you need to be a good person, get baptized, do that. And I'm going to conclude with them, they are also not a Christian, but it is because they've been listening. Do you see the difference? So both, that not everybody at Redemption Hill is a Christian, not everybody at a Catholic church is not. But the difference is what do the churches actually teach is the means by which you get into fellowship with God. And so that's why we need to talk about Catholicism, because Catholicism is cloudy at best with regard to how it is that sinners are made right before a holy God. And then the final group we're going to talk about is like what's been being called like progressive Christians, which is to say they're not Christians, or like pop Christians, but people who think they're Christians, they have just enough Jesus and not have him at all, and we're going to talk about them. So the reason I'm picking those 4 groups is because for Dickinson County, which is where we're standing, most likely, if you run into somebody that doesn't know Jesus, J-dub, Catholic perhaps, pop Christian, atheist. That's probably where you're going to be. So we'll get really, really specific as we move forward with regard to our methods, okay? So that's where we're headed. All right. So that's all I've got for review. I just want to stop here. Does anybody have any questions at this point right now for where we're at? See, everybody who touches their hair or scratches an itch, I'm like, oh, question? Nope. Oh, you have an itchy ear. All right, fine. Just get my hopes up, break my heart. So, okay, so we have some itchy ears. Oh, we might have a couple questions now. Go ahead.
So why don't we put Baptists or Methodists in the same realm as Catholics?
Yeah, so the question is, why don't we put Baptists or Methodists in the same realm as a Catholic? And my answer to that, to be clear, it's not. So I'll leave Methodists out of it because they can be a little squirrely because but I can speak to Baptists. The reason I'm not putting Baptists in there is because the historical Baptist confessions is the biblical gospel, versus the historical confessions of Catholicism are not. Does that make sense? So that doesn't mean there aren't some crazy Baptists out there that aren't Christians, to be clear. But historical Baptist teaching, like jump back to the 1689 London Baptist Confession, you read that document, believe it, read the Bible that it comes out of, you're going to be a Christian. You can't say that for a lot of Catholic confessions, because Catholic confessions are very cloudy in a lot of those areas. So that's why we would not put those two together. Okay, good question. Yeah. Oh, J-dubs, Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah, that's that street cred. You know, you call him a J-dub, and it's like he's one of us. Yep. So yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses. Sorry about that, but thank you for the clarification, because that is important. It's this new religion that Pastor Alex is starting. We'll see. Why don't you all come with me? It'll be great. Okay. Any other questions? That you had one? Yeah, so again, so here's what I don't want to do is I don't want to get into giving an answer for every mainline denomination ever. I'm just picking broad ones. Certainly there are some Lutherans that need to read Luther, and there are others who are going to be in heaven for sure. But yeah.
So you just mean unsaved religious people is how to witness to them, like people that would say they're religious but are not believing the gospel.
In which of those you mean? Yeah, except for I will not talk, it would apply, so the Catholic talk will probably apply to unsaved religious people, but particularly, we're going to look at some particulars with regard to Catholicism itself, that when you meet a Catholic and you're like having a conversation with them, and to be clear, I have an aunt who's a Catholic, who's who's going to heaven, like she's a Christian, so I'm not saying, okay, but at the same time, I also have a couple aunts that aren't, and a few more who are still paying, buying masses to get my grandpa out of purgatory. And I talked to my grandpa before he died. Dude was believing in Jesus, so we don't need anyway. So that is the thing we need to have a conversation about, because when you're talking to a family member, I'm going to get into my Catholic talk, and I'm not even ready to have my Catholic talk. But anyway, the point is it will apply to religious people certainly, but we'll specifically take a look at what has a Catholic been taught, what do they believe, and does that square with the Bible, and more specifically the Christian gospel. So, okay, any other questions? I like this, but just want to make sure. Okay, no more questions. Great. All right, so we got to get into some methods. I want you to know that basically I thought to myself, what are some good things we should do to approach people with the gospel? And then I had them in my brain, and then I wrote them down, and now we're going to talk about them. Okay? These are not these are just good practices that I've come across in my travels, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I had an eraser. There it is. So we are no longer reviewing, so we can erase that. Yep, using this whiteboard. Okay, so principle number 1, this says talk in circles. Talk in circles. And this is great advice. And I'll tell you why. Because, and just so you know, my next one, so talk in circles is number 1, hurry up and slow down is number 2, and use the church is number 3. So if you're catching a theme here of that sounds a little sketchy, that's because it is a little sketchy. But talk in circles is probably a turn of phrase that we've heard before, but I mean it like this. I like to think, and this isn't original to me, but I don't know where this came from, and it might be something that someone else said, but I don't know who said it, so just to be clear. But I think it's really, really good to think of conversations like this, and this is what I mean by talking circles. So that's also a target. November 15th, opening day. Have that gun dialed in. So here's how I think this works. On the outer circle, as you're talking to people, you have things like interests out here. So these are things so you're trying to discover what are your interests. You're going to talk to them. What'd you do this weekend? You're going to say, you're going to talk about the weather and how that applies. But what'd you do this weekend? Who do you like to root for? Things like that. Things that, quite honestly, for the most part, even in the Upper Peninsula, where I told somebody earlier today, you live here for two reasons. Number one, to prove you can, and number two, to not be around other humans. And so even in the Upper Peninsula, you can get away with the outer circle of what are you interested in. I see that you're going to kill a deer on Monday. Like that, anybody, for the most part, will have that conversation with you. So outer circle is interests, okay? And most conversations are going to need to start there. Then, once you move inside of that, you get into values. So the best way to get to values are to start to ask questions of why. Why do you like to hunt? Why do you like to root for the Packers? Never ask that question. It's a terrible question. But why do you, so that's going to be, so you're taking interests and you're starting to ask why, and you're moving in a layer closer, if that makes sense. So values of asking why questions, really, really important. And then from values, you're gonna get into worldviews, but I'm not going to write worldviews. I'm just going to write views. You're going to start to get into views here. And so from values, now you're going to start to develop, understand what this person's worldviews are, because values are a good indicator of how this person views the world. And that's really, really important. Because once you understand how they view the world, that's when you start to come in. And by the way, we have not at this point, interests, values, views, first three circles, we have not ripped the gospel system on them yet. We haven't told them the gospel story yet. We're heading in that direction, but we need to get to views, because now I want to know, okay, so what is your view on this thing or that thing? And quite honestly, it doesn't matter what it is, because once you can get into that views category, then you can start to do what I would call deconstruction and reconstruction. So now you can have a conversation around their view of the world, and you can do some deconstruction if necessary, and then you can try to start to reconstruct what is an accurate and true and consistent worldview, and that's really important. And then from there, you get right to the center, and this is supposed to be a heart. Now you're ready. Now you're ready to get after it. Now we've small talk. So another way to think about this, and this is not original to me, but I don't remember. But like, here's the cooler. Like, if you have a cooler at work, here's the cooler conversation out here. This is coffee out here, more on values, and then now we're at dinner. This is a dinner conversation here, and so you can see here that talking in circles, and what I mean by that is moving from broad to central heart realities is a really, really good approach to now bringing in the gospel into that conversation. And so what that means is, this does build as we go, but what that means is that there's going to be an intentionality behind the way that you are having conversations with people, moving from interests, talking about the weather, and moving intentionally central more to get around to heart realities. Okay? It's really important. If your conversations, and this is not guilt, shame, nothing, but if all of your conversations with all the people you know are always interests, then you're just gonna really struggle to get from interest to the gospel. Oh, you like the Packers? Can I tell you about Jesus? Probably not. But if you can go Packers to weekend to you were Oh, your mom's sick? Oh, how did that make you feel? Oh, are you struggling with that? To how can I think you know I'm a Christian. Can I pray with you, for you? Like, now we're getting somewhere. So many of us get stuck in our relationships with people because it feels so awkward. Here I am, like Pastor Alex tells me the story of the entire Bible. I got my 4 chapters. I'm ready to rip. But how do I get from, I went ice skating this weekend to Jesus walked out of the grave after he died? Well, you don't. You get from ice skating this weekend to the next circle, to the next circle, to the next circle, and pretty soon they're over at your house at dinner or whatever, and now we're getting down to business. So there's many of us in this room, I just think this is true, who have been so discouraged with regard to gospel proclamation because we've thought that the goal here is from the Packers to an empty tomb. It's not. It's talk about the Packers, which is hard, and then move and keep moving and intentionally moving into now we're talking about heart realities. Any questions about that? Yeah.
What do you anticipate as a prescribed timeline between cooler and dinner?
Yeah, that's a great question. So realistically, what's a good timeline between cooler and dinner? It's a great question, and I'm going to say that some of that's gonna come up in my next one, which is hurry up and slow down. So that's gonna come. But I would say that as long as you are working, and by the way, cooler does not literally mean cooler, because we don't have a water cooler here. Well, and most of the guys I work with are Christians, but most of the pastors here anyway, elders. But we don't have a literal cooler here, and we're not necessarily talking about literal dinner, although that works. But my point is I at least want to put on your radar, you're talking in circles because you are moving toward the heart. Like you are intentionally going. And like, here's what I want to have happen. I want this to be like so ingrained in you that you're in a conversation and you hear an interest and you automatically, like your brain fires and it's like the world slows down and everything comes into slow motion and you're mapping out in your head, like on a heads-up display, on how you're going to get from what they did this weekend to Jesus, and you just map it out. You're like, I'm running it. Like you've got to start at least being aware of the fact that we got to get from interest to a heart. So as long as we can create an awareness, the timeline, sometimes this happens so fast, I'm like, well, wait a second, do you want to come eat dinner because you want to murder me and steal all my guns? Like sometimes it happens so fast, you ought to be careful. But you don't really need to be careful, but sometimes it goes really fast and sometimes it's just, and sometimes, honestly, you're never going to get to dinner. You're never going to get to the heart. But the point is we have to create an awareness that this needs to happen. That's a great question. Any other ones? Yeah.
What happened, let's say I've tried to share the gospel with my kids and I bounced it up.
Sure.
I went right to that and I started talking about what they're doing in life right
Yeah.
now with Jesus.
Man.
How do you go back to this and start over again when they know that I'm just trying to find a way to talk about Jesus? How do you go back to
Yeah. So I love that. What do you do when you're trying to talk to somebody and you mess it up? How do you backpedal? I think there's just a real novel idea called just own that you messed it up and just own. Like we talked in I think it was the first or second session, and I thought I'd get more pushback on this when I talked about the fact that you trying to get your neighbor to stop saying the F word before you tell them about Jesus is a bad idea because so many people in the church want to clean up behavior first and then tell some people about Jesus. And look, I've done that. I mean, I was the 8-year-old that was out just shredding all of my friends and telling all of them that, they needed to stop cussing, stop this, stop that, and then Jesus would accept them and all of that. And I've been there. I would hate to see my 8-year-old self, my 18-year-old self. But in the end, especially if it's a known relationship, I think you just go back and say, hey, I'm sorry. Would you forgive me? Just own that because there are very few things that model that you either believe or do not believe the gospel, like your ability to own the fact that you've messed up, right? Like show me a Christian that's never wrong. They're a Christian in name only. They do not understand what Christ accomplished on the cross, period. Because if you're so bad that the only perfect guy ever to live had to die like that, then that means you're not very good. And if you can never admit that you're not good, then that just tells me, so I actually think there's a beautiful opportunity when we've messed up, and I have, and we all have. If you can go back and just say, hey, I messed up, will you forgive me? I mean, that is such a profound, you want to talk about cutting right from interest to the heart, you just did it. And so I think just owning that, being honest, and asking for another shot at it is a really good approach to that. Anyone else? Okay. So that brings us, so number one, talk in circles. We know what this means. Okay. Number two, I'm going to say this one in stages, but I'll say it all at once. Hurry up. Well, I'll just write the whole thing. Hurry up and slow down. That's the best I could do. So if you have a better way of saying that, feel free. Hurry up and slow down. So here's what I really mean by that. I am afraid that it kind of, I didn't really track down where this idea came from, and I don't think it's altogether a bad idea, but the idea of like friendship evangelism and sayings like they need to see how much you care before they care how much you know, or just some stuff like that, right? St. Francis of Assisi, who didn't actually say this, but it's attributed to him, preach the gospel, always use words when necessary. Kind of that idea of like, what you need to do is you need to kind of live a life that shows everybody that you really care, you really love them. Amen. And you should live a life that backs up the gospel. Amen. But I think that what's happened, and this happens all the time, by the way, we take a good idea, like care about people, actually legitimately care about them, and tell them the gospel, and we take the actually care about them part, and we leave out the tell them the gospel part, or some churches, tell them the gospel part, but don't actually care about them. Bad idea. We have to put those two things together. That's where hurry up and slow down comes in, because there is a gospel urgency. Like when Jesus is saying today's the day of salvation, he means this is urgent. Repent today, believe the gospel. There's urgency here. Time is short. You're going to die. Your life's a vapor. Here in the morning, gone in the morning. Urgency. And so there is that. But then there's the other side of that, which is also the good side of demonstrating that you care for people and all of that. So here's what I want to say. Obviously, you have a bit of a paradox here, right? Between the idea of hurrying up and slowing down. And I want us to really think about, when should I hurry up and when should I slow down? Because that's wisdom. Don't slow down when you should hurry up, and don't hurry up when you should slow down. How do you figure out when to do that? Here's what I want us to think about. This little word right here, what I would call the context of that relationship. The context of that relationship. Context needs to determine, if you are going to slow down, the context of that relationship needs to determine that. Listen, context, not cowardice. So write in really big, like all across, really big letters, Pastor Alex is not telling me to slow down because I'm a coward. Because that's what a lot of us do. By a lot of us, I mean, of course, none of you in this room, but I do that, where it's like, hey, I got to slow play this one. And in fact, it's not because it's wisdom and the Holy Spirit saying like, hey, bud, just calm down a second. Instead, it's oftentimes, I don't want to transition from interests to values, to views, to the heart. And so I'll stay out in interests because I'm a coward. We can't do that. We just cannot do that. And so context of relationship really, really needs to determine, are you going to hurry up or are you going to slow down? So times to hurry up would be these. A couple of good examples. One, you're out of town. So you are at a place where you will never see this human in front of you again, and you've had an interaction with them, and you're either going to leave and say bye, or you're going to tell them something that might still matter 1,000 years from now. And you got one shot. You're in Florida visiting, whatever, sitting on a park bench, guy starts talking to you, you're on a plane. I'm not going to see this guy again. Which means I might have to go from like interests to like views to Jesus walked out of the tomb 3 days later. And that might be a little awkward. But in that context of you not seeing them ever again, you might just need to make that awkward. I mean, I've actually said to people before, hey, it's been a great conversation. It's going to get awkward here for just a second, but I'm doing this because I care about you. Like I really, and just, or you don't say that, but I mean, however, but like, yeah, it's going to be hard to, but in that, you're never going to see him again. So that's where the urgency of hurry up, say something that matters, don't be a coward, right? So that's one. You're out of town. That's a big one. You pick up a hitchhiker. I mean, that's right? Like things like that. You're on a phone call with someone. You're talking to them. They called to sell you insurance, and you listen to them and say, "Hey, can I just tell you something that's really, really changed my life?" And you're gonna so. Those are situations where the slow play is not going to work. That person's probably not calling you back. That hitchhiker's you're probably not picking them up again. That has happened to me, actually, where I've picked up the same person 2 or 3 times, but now they're on to me. So that's true. That's not a clergy exaggeration. They're literally on to me. So they're like, nope, we're good. So, okay, but maybe next time I'll get you when it's colder out. So that happens, things like that. But you're not going to get that opportunity again. So you need to almost make an opportunity there. And you do it. You're kind, you're gracious, you're loving, you're all of that. But it's going to be a little awkward. And so you gotta just kind of make that one happen. Now, that also means that okay, one other, and this is where one other time to hurry up is when you have been in a relationship with whoever this person is, and that relationship has nurtured to a point where it's just time. Now, you'll notice that's a pretty confusing sentence. What do you even mean by that, Alex? The relationship's nurtured to where it's time? Yeah, I don't know, but probably sooner rather than later. Right? So like, I just get really frustrated when I hear people who read some books about friendship evangelism and read some books about they need to know how much you care before they care how much you know, that's it. That sentence, like, so I get a little frustrated when that is being said in the context of a relationship that's been a decade old. Like, okay, bud, it's been 10 years. It's time, right? And I have to say that to myself because I can easily play cribbage with my neighbor until I'm 40 and think that, just slow playing it. No, that there comes a time where you just have to switch from the slow down to the hurry up. And I don't know when to tell you that is, but I think that if you ask the Lord for wisdom, you'll know. You'll know. So this is interesting, and I didn't plan this, but earlier today, I had left to come into work, and anyway, I won't tell you how it happened, but I'm looking at my schedule, I'm going, I need to shoot deer on the 15th. I know all of you in this room were thinking the same thing probably on your drive-in this morning, and I need to check my rifle before, and I tried to check it yesterday, but I ended up on a counseling call, so I never even got out of my truck, so I was like, all right, I'm going right now. So I drove to the range, to sight in my gun, and I get there, and there's a dude standing there, and he's shooting his pistol, and I'm like, all right, and just, like I've been really asking the Lord to make me a bolder evangelist, so like I'm looking at this guy as like, this is an opportunity right here, because I've been asking the Lord, so I get there, hey man, how you doing? I'm good, how are you? And I say, I'm good. And he's like, actually, and he starts to say, I drove all the way here from wherever I came from, somewhere in Green Bay, came up here, I brought my pistol, I was scouting for deer, and I brought my rifle, and I don't have any ammo for it, so I can't sight my rifle. And I was like, what caliber is your rifle? He's like, it's a .308. I was like, interesting. And I look inside of my bag and my wife laments the fact that everything I own is just it looks like a flock of hamsters has done a thing. And so like my shooting bag, I got everything, a couple cheeseburgers in there. And so I'm digging around. I jump in my bag and I laugh about it. Now I'm digging around in there and the dude probably thinks, what is this guy doing? And guess what? I don't own a .308 because I sold it like 2 years ago. Guess who's got a box and a half of .308 ammo? This guy. So I was like, hey man, here's the deal. I got some. So why don't you so he's like, I don't know. So I'm like, no man, it's fine. Just run it. It'll be great. You're shooting a deer at 100 yards. I won't get into all of it. We talked about ballistics, fed him a couple of ballistic tables, ballistic coefficients, things like that. We talked about grain of bullet, feet per second, temperature, anyway, I got him into shooting. So now he's shooting my ammo, and this is going really well. And I'm like, I'm going to get this dude. Except for, and I was ready. I was like, I already got this planned. I'm just going to, and then he starts to talk to me. And I'm like, I'm going to get this guy's number. And like, I don't want to take him on a date, to be clear, but it's like, I'm going to get, like, this is going really well. So it went from initially, and I'm asking the Lord, like, Lord, help me here, because I don't want to be a coward. Like, if I got to transition this thing and it's got to get awkward and we got to talk about Jesus, I'm ready. But it was like, and I'll give an account for this someday. I mean, I really will. I did not roll in on this dude with the gospel. We talked for, I don't know. Like, I was there twice as long as I wanted to be. I was like, I got RedLife tonight. I got to get back and prep some stuff. And he just wanted to chat. Talked about all kinds of stuff. And I did not. Now, if he would have really opened the door, I'd have walked through it. But he didn't open any doors. But I dropped the whole, I mentioned what I do, but I didn't say I'm a pastor because I normally keep that covert. But I thought, I'm going to use this one and see how he responds. So I said I said something about referencing my work. And he goes, oh, what do you do? And at this point, he'd said 3 F words, and I was fine with it. But I said, so I'm a pastor, and I'm colorblind, but it seemed to me like his hue kind of changed a little bit. And so just a great conversation. And I thought maybe the pastor thing would allow, but it didn't, and we just kept on talking. Things were great. I got his number. He's going to be back. He's going to call me when he comes back. We text. So that's the situation where in the moment, I go into that thinking, I'm going to run this guy. And I just honestly, like I say, I'll give an account, but I don't think that's what I was supposed to do, so I didn't. Now, you might say, Alex, listen, you shouldn't be teaching this class if you didn't run that dude. Maybe I shouldn't. But in the moment where it was, let's hurry up, in fact, it seemed to me like the Spirit was like, no, actually, let's slow down. You've got a context here with this guy where you could be more effective, perhaps, when he's back up here next week, and you guys can go out for a Coke. So that can happen. So that was where I left that with him. So that's an example where sometimes you hurry up and sometimes you slow down. But I think you want to be asking the Lord, like if you're gonna slow play, all I'm trying to say is you better really be sure that that's what you should do. And I really felt like in that moment I need to do that. So you might disagree with that, and I might even agree with you that I maybe shouldn't have done it that way. But in the moment, that's how I chose to do it. So sometimes you're going to slow down, and sometimes you're going to need to hurry up. Now, I need to hurry up. So with regard to slowing down, this is what I want to say. The only reason to slow down is to intentionally, that word is very important. The only reason to slow down is in order to intentionally foster that relationship. What I mean by foster the relationship is I don't particularly care if you are better friends. What I mean by that is that you are perhaps looking like in a relationship like with this guy where we're an hour into this thing, like you're looking for a more natural opportunity before you just floor it and make it awkward or whatever, but you are intentionally fostering the relationship for gospel purposes, okay? So that's the only time I want you slowing down. But there's wisdom there given the context. So like here's the thing, here's what we don't want. Here comes Thanksgiving. I don't want you sitting down for Thanksgiving turkey with the goal of seeing every one of your family members bow the knee to the king by the time we're eating pumpkin pie. Bad. But I do want you going into that and going, but I want to have a good gospel conversation with Uncle whoever he is. Like that's a good expectation. So you're saying in there, you're saying I'm going to hurry up and have a good gospel conversation or foster this relationship better, but you're not necessarily saying I need to convert all of my family members. That's a bad idea. And a lot of younger Christians actually who are really zealous because man, Jesus saved them and he's blowing them up and they're like, dang, everybody needs to know this. And they're right about that. But you just want to use wisdom in the hurry up and slow down. Okay? All right, any questions about that? About that one in particular? I thought that would create some questions. Maybe I'm wrong, but. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, what do you do when the conversation starts to turn into an argument, starts to get heated? So what I do there is I don't want to get heated. So they can get heated. I don't want to. And when they start to get heated, probably the profitability, like if there was a percentage of value or profitability for the outcome of this conversation, probably the faster the heart rate and the louder the voices, there's probably like an inverse of that. The profitability just falls off a cliff. So I'm gonna try to usually stop that from happening before it gets to that level. But sometimes, sometimes it happens. I have some stories of talking when I used to, in my younger days, travel around the dark streets of Traverse City in the middle of the night and talk to people about Jesus. Sometimes, like, you say the name or you say the whatever, and boom, we get there in a hurry. So you want to, but as best as you can, don't let it get there. That's what I would say. That's what I would say. And part of, Joe, that's a really good question, because I think part of what can get the conversation heated is if you allow the conversation to get into something else. Like, I think it was last week or the week before where we had the conversation of, like, what do you do when somebody attaches Jesus to Donald Trump, right? And they hate Donald Trump, right? I know, I'm just using Donald Trump, if that's okay. But they hate Donald Trump, so they hate Jesus too. Or they hate Joe Biden, so whatever. But you want to divorce those two things because you want them to be offended about the nature of the gospel, not necessarily offended because they freighted in something to the gospel or something to Christianity that isn't intrinsically Christian, if that makes sense. So that's a lot of times where people can start to get heated. Well, my pastor, I grew up in a church, and my pastor was really mean and all that. Okay, well, get the pastor out of the conversation because we're talking about Jesus. Well, Joe Biden says he's a Christian. Okay, well, get him out of here. Donald Trump says he's a Christian. We'll get him out of here. Like, because you, if the temperature is going to be turned up, you want it to be turned up because the gospel is by nature offensive, not because they're bringing in a foreign substance and attaching it to the gospel and then want to fight you about that. Any other questions? Yeah, so if they're not angry and they're debating, then you need to stay really calm, and you just need to answer their questions. And if they bring up a thing, by the way, this happens all the time to me, if they bring up a thing that you've never heard of before, then say, yeah, I don't know, I got to look into that. I had a lady one time that somehow we got from Adam in the garden to quantum physics. Literally, that's how it happened. Quantum physics is above my pay grade. Like, C minus, all through high school, so quantum physics. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I honestly, I was like, I have no idea. And that's okay to say. That's okay to say. So debating is fine, but when it gets heated, that's when you're going to really, and even with the debate, I just took that back to, so here's the thing, I don't really know what quantum physics is, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't apply to the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. So if we can keep it there, and then we can talk about quantum physics another time. So, yeah. Okay, here's what we got to do. Take a break. We'll be back in here in 5 minutes, and grab water, whatever you need to do, and then we'll grab our last one here and be done. All right, then. So, I want to make sure that this hurry up and slow down idea, and you are really clear here that the context of the relationship determines which one you do. Like, that makes sense in my brain. I just want to make sure it makes sense in yours, and I don't want you to be kind necessarily. If it's not working, because I think this is really important, but we got to make sure that we understand it. So I want to just, before we move on, I just want to make sure, no questions, no concerns on that. Yeah.
You've got a long-term relationship with somebody where you're going to see them a bunch, and it's always awkward. They always want to pull your chain and argue. You keep it slow, or you escalate it up and then back off.
Yeah, so what do they want to argue with you about? Okay, so the question is, you got a long-term relationship. Every time you're around somebody, they want to jerk your chain, ring your bell, rattle your cage, and they always want to argue. So what do they want to argue about? Oh, okay. So when I have somebody, so his answer is, since we're recording and you can't hear him, they want to argue about the validity of the Gospels, the validity of the Bible, things like that. I'm going to stomp on the gas on that one. I'm going to absolutely stomp on the gas on that one, because that really I can sit around you and let you snipe me, or I can just bring the heat. And so in a lot of those instances, people like that. Most of those people are regurgitators, and the reason that you need to know that is because they are regurgitating some talking points that they've heard on whoever, CNN, YouTube, whatever it was. And the way you'll know you're dealing with a regurgitator is that if you actually ask them some questions to where they can't regurgitate an answer because it's something they hadn't thought about because they haven't actually thought about it, they're going to fall apart like a cheap suitcase often. And you don't want to do that to humiliate them because now you've really, but I've just found, like, you know, the people who supposedly, I was having quite a few coffees with a guy who had come to Redemption Hill because he was dating a girl who was a Christian. He wasn't. He's an atheist. Said that to me the first Sunday he was ever here. And he's like, you know, and he just kind of said, like, I have a lot of, what did he say? Like, I can't believe in Christianity because I just have so many strong arguments against it. And I was like, oh, great. And I don't know if he was anticipating this. Like, I'm free tomorrow. I'm free Tuesday. Let's go talk about it. So we did. His strong arguments were laughable. I mean, just laughable. And so I'm not saying there aren't strong arguments, and you need to be aware of those, and we'll talk about those in our atheism talk. But with that person, I just want to ask some questions. I want to kind of understand what they're saying, and then we're just gonna get after it. Because otherwise, for you to actually have a profitable relationship with that person could be very, very difficult. If every time you're around them, they get to snipe at you, and you never get to fire a couple gospel bullets back at them. So it's like, oh, you want to play? We can play. Let's do it. And again, not arrogance, not being a jerk, but just, yeah, I'm gonna be very direct with that person. Yep. And I actually prefer those kind of conversations, actually, because if you can just come right out and if they just come right out and tell you what they believe, well, now we just went from outside circle to heart level like that, and they did it for you. So now you pick which one of those tributaries you want to swim up there with and go get them. And I mean, that's awesome. So typically I love people who are really politically minded because, hey, there's a worldview we can work with. You are hoping for the kingdom of God to come, except for you don't want God and you don't actually want his kingdom. But you actually do, you just don't know it. We can run that. You know, I mean, so I love those people. They're much easier because they're going to go from interest to heart right now. And so it sounds to me like you have a good opportunity there with that person. It's a great question. Any others? Okay, then. So that brings us to number 3. And number 3 is my favorite. So number 1, talk in circles. Number 2, hurry up and slow down. Number 3, and I never thought that I would say this, let alone write it down on a whiteboard. Use the church. Use the church. Now, here's what I don't mean by that. There's this thought that, you know, Alex is the gunslinger, right? He's the hired gun, he's the mercenary. Alex is like who, you know, and so what we got to do is we got to get people here so that Alex can gunsling them, right? So Alex can save them, so Alex can, you know, that's bad. And so I know that this happens because it was when I first moved here, people would come up to me, they'd be like, hey, Alex, are you preaching September, 37th? And I'm like, I didn't even know there was a September 37th. You know, it's January. I hadn't thought about it, probably. Why? Well, because my so-and-so is going to be there, and I want you to get him. And I'm like, okay, well, now, so that's a bad idea, right? That's a bad idea. I'm not the gunslinger, not my job to save your uncle or save anybody. I cannot do that. I cannot do that. Now, I can facilitate a conversation. So that's what I mean by use the church. I at least mean that. It doesn't mean Alex is the hired gun, the mercenary, not going to gun your family down for you with the gospel. Not going to do that. Can't do that. Don't ask me to do that. But I can teach the Bible in wherever we're going to be on September 37th. I'll preach that text. Jesus is going to be there. We'll talk about him. And then you can go begin a conversation. Okay? So there's a sense in which I'm not the mercenary, but there's another sense in which inviting people to Redemption Hill is a really good idea. A really, really good idea. Now, You're not inviting them. So there's this other idea. There's this other idea that kind of pervades the church. You know how much I love my Green Bay Packers. So here's what happens. You buy your ticket, you go to the stadium, you get your drink, you eat your cheese curds, and you watch the professionals play the game. And when they do well, you're like, yeah. And when they don't do well, you're like, man, we stink. And and so that's what happens. And then after the fact, they win, and you say, we won. Or they lose, and you say, we lost. And sometimes that mentality actually pervades the church more than we know. You don't pay a ticket. We give you a cup of coffee, no cheese curds, and I'm not a professional. And so it's not this idea of we show up in church and we watch the professionals do the thing and we are entertained or we feel better or we're whatever. That's a bad approach to church. It's not why we gather. Paul says the job of a pastor is to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. So my job is to equip you. It's not, Alex, you're equipped, you do it. It's, Alex, you're equipped and called by God, and that's a thing in the Bible. Now you equip us. So now your job is to go out. And think about this. There's one of me, and there's however many of you in here. And you are going to meet people, run into people, talk to people, know people that I will never, ever meet. And probably aren't going to come and see me tomorrow, probably. And you have all these great opportunities. And so the idea here is not Alex is the professional, we're the spectators. All of that to say, I want to help you have a conversation. So I promise you on September 37th, if I do my job, which is to preach the biblical text, you will have plenty of ammo for a conversation. I don't know what, if it's okay, I'm going to tell the story of running into to Tom and Eileen Pugh's, that's your son, on Christmas Eve, flat tire, change his tire, invite him to church. He comes to church. He's already a Christian. I was bummed, actually. I was like, dang it, I had this guy. But anyway, so he comes to church, and we were in the Sermon on the Mount. And was it adultery or was it divorce? It was adultery. So it's. You said warm, pleasant Jesus. Yeah. So it was like Christmas Sunday, and Tom and Eileen roll in with their whole family, and they're all believers. Tom and Eileen, members of the church, all that. So praise God. But it was adultery for Christmas, and Eileen and I have kind of giggled about that on a number of occasions. But the point is wherever we are, we're gonna preach the Bible. You're gonna hopefully see Jesus, and then you're gonna be able to go have a conversation. And so I have the responsibility to be faithful to the biblical text and teach it, and then you have the responsibility of you've invited a friend to come with you to Redemption Hill. Now you go have the conversation with them. So that's kind of a mingling of, Alex, you do your job, which is teach the Bible, among other things, equip us, among other things. That's your job, Alex. And then we're going to do ours, which is have these conversations, do the work outside of here. So I think that is a really, really important understanding for you to have. So use the church. And I'll just tell you that I've been on staff at a couple of churches where it was, and I want to just really respectful, bride of Christ, but it was difficult to invite people to come to these churches because everybody was in a suit. And we lived in the hood, and so this dude's not going to show up in a suit, and I'm wearing a suit because that's what I'm supposed to do. And that's tough. There's some hurdles there. And I've been in some churches where, if I bring a guy on Mother's Day, he's going to hear, a great story of the importance of moms, but he's not going to hear about Jesus. So I've been there, but we strive for this church to not be that. We want to remove all the hurdles. Now, to be clear, the church does not exist for unbelievers. The church gathers on a Sunday morning for the high and exalted worship of God, but we want to invite our unbelieving friends to come and watch us and behold this wonderful God, and it may just be that God chooses to save and to draw and to do all of that. And so we want to, So the point that I'm making here is that I do think that the Lord has been incredibly kind to us to have this, to be a part of this church and this community and have the opportunity to invite people here. And that we're going to remove all the hurdles that we possibly can. Certainly not the offense of the gospel, but all the hurdles, all the man-made hurdles we possibly can for them to hear about Christ and for you to go have a conversation with them about it afterwards. And And I'll also say that I think I may have shared this earlier, but I was really encouraged. The one day, I may have said this, but I was in Chris gas station and I invited the girl to come to church and she said, "You're the third person today that's invited me to Redemption Hill." I was like, dang it, get them. I don't know who the first two people were, but I love it. I was like, "So you coming?" She said, "No." I was like, "All right, well, maybe a fourth one." But so the beauty of being in a smaller community like this is, you talk about market saturation, which is a term for business, but still, talk about market saturation. Like, we're in a really great. I mean, when I ask other people, like, "Hey, do you go to church anywhere?" Nope. And I do that a lot with people here because I'm going to see them again. So that's just a great way to kind of talk in circles. And so do you go to church anywhere? No, I don't. And I'll often say, I try to keep the fact that I'm the pastor under the lid. So I say, yeah, I go to Redemption Hill. Love it there. 8:15, 10:15, love to have you. And most often somebody will say, "Yeah, my aunt goes there," or "Yeah, so-and-so goes there," or "Yeah, my coworker goes there," or "Yeah." It's like, so that's happening. And so what we want to be is, we want to be the church who gathers, that's important, worship God, all of that we do on a Sunday morning. And then we want to scatter into the community and be the church. You're not the church when you show up here on Sunday morning. You're the church all the time. So the church gathers and the church scatters. And when we gather, we worship God. And when we scatter, we worship God. When we gather, we tell ourselves and we sing of God and we rehearse the gospel. And when we scatter, we keep doing the same thing. And so use the church, okay? Second thing I mean by that is that I just want to say, now I'm talking use the church more in the fact that we are members of the body, and I just want to say on that, we are just better together. You are going to be a way better gospel proclaimer if you do it with someone else, okay? This question came up from last week with regard to the Great Commission. It's a great question. So is the Great Commission just given for the 11 and then they do it, or is that for all of us? Is that for all of us to do? And I think the biblical answer is that the Great Commission is a commission for the church to accomplish. And so in some contexts, like you're in Papua New Guinea and here's some people that don't even speak the language or whatever, and it's a frontier context, you're going to tell them about Jesus. If they believe in him, you're going to baptize them, and then you're going to disciple them. But in our context, Pastor Josh baptized the people here last Sunday. He's not more obedient than the rest of us because he baptized them and we didn't. That's not the context is the church does these things. And so when the church scatters, we tell people the gospel. But Jesus' design there, and we see this from elsewhere in his ministry, and we certainly see that the disciples and apostles understood this, is that there's no, and if there was a guy who could do it, it would have been Paul. Like Paul, you want to talk about a John Wayne with the gospel, it could have been Paul. Lone Ranger, Paul. Like, dude's legit, right? But he doesn't even go out by himself. In fact, he spends all of Romans, chapter 16, talking about all of his friends. And the point there is Paul didn't do ministry by himself, and you shouldn't either. And the reason that you shouldn't, and this is what I've seen in my own life, is that there is profound blessing in accountability. Do you know that? I just want to, this is not virtue signaling. I am a coward if I don't have accountability. Because I have all of the best of intentions, and then I talk myself out of having the conversation with my neighbor. And what I need is accountability. In addition to that, think about this. What if a couple of you work at the same place, and so-and-so, you're believers, and so-and-so's not? Well, you're going to be much more effective with so-and-so if you lovingly pursue him with the gospel, talk in circles, hurry up, slow down, get him with the story, get him with the system, invite him to read. All of that. Like, you're going to do all of that so much more effectively if you're doing it from multiple angles. You're just going to be better at it. We're better together. You need accountability. And you need other brothers and sisters to come along with you in this gospel work, okay? Super, super important. Okay. Give me 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to ask for questions. In the final 2 minutes, I want to remind you, our hope and our confidence is not in methods. Not in methods. If you leave here and you're like, we're gonna take the dang hill because now we're gonna talk in circles, hurry up and slow down, and whatever the other one is, use the church. Now we're gonna take the mountain. We're not. If we take the hill, and we will, it will be because when Jesus is talking to our boy Peter, actually all the disciples, but he says, "Hey boys." Matthew 16, "Who do people say I am? Some say Elijah, Jeremiah, one of the prophets. Great. Who do you say I am?" What's Peter say? "You're the Christ, the Son of the Most High God." Jesus looks at him and says, Peter, you're blessed because flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven. You're Peter, and on this rock, I will build my church. I will do this. When I read Jesus saying, I will build my church, do you know what I think that says? I'm going to do it. I don't need your methods. I don't need you to be clever. I just need you to be faithful. But I will do it. And we have 2,000 years of church history, church, to know that he's going to do it. I was just reading earlier for some leisurely reading that this church started in 1880 with like 3.5 people and all sorts of setbacks and no money and meeting in a dang house, and they took the wall out of the middle of the house and 5 of them got in there. And they seems like they were chewing up pastors. Pastor like every year and a half. 1880. I mean, and think about that. And here we are. I don't know what the math is on that. You can look it up. But here we are a long time later, and we're still here. That just this local body, this local expression. And this local expression can trace itself back to 1880, and the person who started this, and they were Christians, they can trace their lineage back from there. And you can trace this thing all the way back to Jesus. Because when he said he's going to build his church, he meant it. He's going to do it. And so my confidence in yours is not that Alex had some pretty clever turns of phrases about talking in circles. That is not it. That's helpful if it is. If it's helpful, use it. If it's not, don't. But the point is that when the people of God proclaim the gospel of God, God builds his church. That's what he does. And he's going to do that until he returns. So praise his name. Let's be faithful. And let's see him build his church. Questions? Yeah.
You did not touch on following up once you dropped this gospel grenade. I got hit by a lot of people in my life where people would just drop the message and then beat and count, check, did it.
Yep.
What about, where does that?
Yeah, so it's a great question about follow-up. If I ran into you in Florida, I'm not following up. But in the context of a relationship, yeah. In fact, we were just chatting earlier. Someone who had just shared the gospel by way of that systematic with her grandma, and she says, well, so what do I do next? What's the next step? Well, the next step is the next time you see grandma, say, hey, grandma, just to review. Here's what we talked about last time. Did you have any thoughts on that? And so you do want to follow up because you want to be there if the Lord grants to cause that seed to grow. You want to be there along to water and to all of that if that's what the Lord wants to do. So I think follow-up's a really big deal. I was having the worst Sunday of my entire life about 15 years ago, and I mean it the worst. I was a youth pastor having a bad day, really bad day, and a lady walked up to me who I didn't particularly like, and she hands me a 3x5 card with a phone number on it and says, hey, and this is exactly how she said it. This is just how she was. Hey, call this guy. I met him at the gym. He wants to know about Jesus. And I was like, why don't you call him? I didn't say that, but I wanted to. And when you're 20 and don't know anything, I took it. I think I was 20, 21. So I take it and I call the guy, and lived in Hipsterville, Traverse City. So he says, why don't we meet at Serenity? And Serenity, you may be interested to know, is the word serenity only, instead of T-Y, it's T-E-A because it's a tea bar. So I remember the worst Sunday of my life, and now I got to go meet this dude at a tea bar where apparently you sit at a bar and you don't drink beer, you drink tea. So that's what we did. And honestly, the dude wanted to know about Jesus. He's like, hey man, tell me about Jesus. I'm like, okay, I could do that. So I did. And you know what he said at the end of the conversation? And I love, we're really good friends. He's a Christian now. We're really good friends. This is what he said. I don't think I believe that yet, but can we still be friends? I was like, well, yes, we can still be friends. And the evidence to this point, the evidence that you actually care about someone is that you will follow up, that you do care, that you're not looking. I used to read a lot of Westerns, Louis L'Amour, and the baddest gunslingers around were the dudes that had a bunch of notches in their belt. That's how many dudes they'd killed, at least to my 8-year-old brain anyway. It might mean something other than that. Point is, we're not looking for notches in our belt. We're not looking for, I shared the gospel with X amount of people today. That's a bad metric. The metric is, I loved this person enough to care about them, to tell them, and now I'm going to stay there until they push me out. So that's a really good point. Really good point. Another question? Yeah.
How would you navigate trying to be mindful that it's not just a big monologue, where you're just say, well, yes, that all makes sense, now I believe in Jesus?
It's a great question. So how do you manage the monologue? Here's what I would say. Find a way to say the gospel as clearly and concisely as you possibly can. That would be one approach. So in other words, if it takes you an hour and a half to get the gospel out, you need to work on that. The other side of it is you're reading their body language. Like that girl that I was talking to when we were building bike trails, and I could just like working, kind of half listening to all of a sudden kind of like more enamored and I talk to people a lot, so I'm going to be able to read the room a little better. But in that, it was like she's very much paying attention. The other thing, hey, does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense. You got any questions? No? Okay, so that's another one. But yeah, you want to be very careful that you don't turn into Pastor Alex, roll out the pulpit for Thanksgiving. Family, listen, I need 90 minutes of your time so I can. That's a bad idea. So learning how to say the gospel as clearly and concisely is really important, because otherwise you're right. You end up in a monologue, and they probably are tuning you out, especially with the fact that people's attention spans are they've, bad. So
asking questions allows them to share what they believe and what they think, and that gives you a few more steps towards the middle of that circle.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, as you're working toward the middle of the circle, but as you're working toward the middle of the circle, they're talking, not you. Like, that's the whole thing. The way you get from interest moving in is by you asking the right question and letting them talk. So if you're doing so thank you for asking that. If you're doing all the talking, hoping that you're moving them from the outside to the inside, you're moving them to like circles that don't exist. They're like, I got to get away from this guy. He talks too much. So that's bad. So they're talking and you are guiding them toward heart level, and then you're going, oh, interesting. And then you're going to slip it in there. That's a great question. Okay, one more. Only one. See, I'm going to get 7 emails. I'm trying to,
So not even sure how to ask the question, but it talks about our crowns, and that when we get to heaven, to put our crown at the foot of the Lord.
Yeah.
And in the crown, as we evangelize here on earth, we get gems.
Okay.
So I know it's not a notch in the belt. You don't want to go out
Yeah.
there and see how many gems you get in the crown, but can you explain that a little bit? What it talks about in the Bible with the crown?
Yeah, so I will speak broadly to rewards. I haven't read about the specific rewards of the crowns and the gems in a little while, but on a broader level, absolutely, there is a reward that you are accumulating in heaven for your faithfulness. And the crazy part of it is that God gives you the reward, and then you give it back to Him to magnify His glory and His excellency. As far as the relationship between how your gospel proclamation and how all of that works, I don't have an answer to that, not right now off the top of my head, but it is a very good point that no, you're not accumulating notches in your gun belt. And the reason that I think that some people want to do that is because they lose sight of the fact that the ability to roll into GC next week and be like, by the way, deer hunting's great, but on the same topic, I shared the gospel with 5 people this week. Wait for the applause, you don't have any. Because Jesus would say to that, hey, you just received your reward, and it's not good. Like to the guy who's praying on the street corner, this showy religion. So the notches on the gun belt thing means that you've lost sight of the fact that there is an eternal reward. And I even feel like, to be clear, and I actually think it's even a little bit weird for me to talk about the guy earlier this morning that I was talking to, because the Lord, I'm not doing that to be like, hey, by the way, that just happened to me earlier today. But those kind of things, God rewards that. He sees all of it. So every time your family member laughs at you, every time He sees all of it, in the end, it's gonna all get squared away, and there is crowns that we lay at the feet of our King. And the Bible talks about showing up there without any, gonna be a bad day. Going to be a bad day. You want to be there with gifts to magnify the excellencies of Jesus Christ. So I think that's a super good point. Super good point. Okay, so thank you for being here. We'll be here again next week, and then we take a break the following for Thanksgiving, and then we're back again to finish up. So thank you for being here. If you have questions, I'm here. Love you. See ya.